Welcome to the live Stairways for the Stairway to DAX and Power BI that I'm running right now as part of the community circle. My name is Steve Jones with Redgate Software, and today this is class number 6, I believe. I think that's the correct number. So I went through a number of these levels in this Stairway in the last few weeks. We got through average level 7 and count level 8. This week I want to go to level 9, do max and max X. And then I'd like to start level 10 if I can get there, because this is the one where we actually start to use Power BI as part of the articles. So with that, let's get started. So in looking at the max item that we've got here, one of the things that we have that's the same is that we have a max function, which is the aggregate function that we normally expect, the max of a column, and the max X, which would be the max based on a subset where we can actually choose a table or a table expression, and then an expression where we can do some math. So in a number of these articles, we've walked through this combination. Max is slightly different. When I read through this, I found it to be slightly different. So let's go through that. As with the other levels, there's this preparation to download things into Power Pivot. Now, these are the tables that are listed, fact, internet, and reseller sales, and then these dimension tables. We actually have those in our Power BI already set here. So internet sales, reseller sales, we've renamed some. And then we've added this sample table as well. And this sample table is a small table that I thought was interesting because I could actually use this and mentally do the aggregations inside of a very small window. So we've got that set up. So let's look at what max is. So like the other functions, this is the aggregate function for max. And so max is designed to give us the maximum value in a column. So that's the only parameter that it takes. Now, this is the pivot table in Power Pivot where it says you can summarize by. We have that same sort of thing in Power BI. If I go to my the previous one I did. So I've got the count column here. Over here is where I would actually well, not that one because that's a measure, sorry. This is an aggregation, so the count here is where I could actually say, I want a different sort of aggregation to take place on this column. In this case, count was the one we chose for that particular level. So let's add a new item here. We'll call this max. And this is where we'll actually duplicate this pivot table with Power BI instead of Power Pivot. So as this notes, it says there's a column containing numbers, and if they have a numeric or date value, then max ignores it and coming to the value if it's not one of these. Now this is different because count, sum, average don't take date values, but max and min, which would be the equivalent here, can actually take date values because those aggregate functions actually make sense when we think about them in terms of the aggregation. The count of dates, really it's count of rows. The sum of dates or average of dates doesn't really make sense. Now this was an interesting thing we saw, that if the column contains no number of dates, it returns a blank. I'm not sure how we do this, at least in Power BI, how I have a column that isn't designated as a numeric field or a date field, but we'll see. We tried this with a string field last time, and we found that it did not work. So as we went through before, we found the syntax is max takes just a particular column here, just like the other sum, count, average aggregation functions. They take a column in particular. So in this case, we're going to do the product standard cost and reseller sales. So let's do that. It's something that we're going to do here in the practice. So let's set that up. We should be able to do it at this point in time. We've been following along. So let's come over here to our table. Let's actually start with our small sample table and say new column. And we do have I don't really have a cost column, but we do have a sale amount. So we'll just call this max sale. And this will be the max of the sale amount. If I look through here, the IntelliSense, I can find it. close off my parentheses, and the max amount in this particular table is 60. So that's what we should see for every row in this particular column. And that's what we see. We could actually do that with min as an experiment. We would see the same thing. In this case, we should get a 10 if we said the min sale equal the min sale amount. The IntelliSense is pretty good. You'll notice as I start typing a column, it finds the correct table. Because I typed sales, it went to sales sample at the very beginning. So 10 and 60, that makes perfect sense. That's what we would expect. If we were to do this in reseller sales, we should get this 2000 number. So let's come over here. Let's go reseller sales. And we'll say new column. Now, unlike Power Pivot in Excel, we can't insert a column here in the model, but we can add it to the end. And so we'll call this a max standard cost. Max, and we'll do reseller sales product standard cost, which is I think what we want to do. Yep. And let's close out our formula. And when we see this at the end, we should see that 2000, what is it, 2171. Let's come here to the end, and that's what we see here as well, because we're working off the same data set that Bill did in his particular thing, or his example. All right, we're going to come to that, but we've got some discussion here on max X. Now, unlike in the sum average count items, we have a max A function here, which I believe is later on in the series we'll get to. But for now, max X is the iterator that works across the rows, allowing us to have some sort of expression that will be evaluated under the max value, or find the max value of the expression. This is, again, like the other functions that we can supply a table or an expression that returns a table, such as a filter expression in here. And then, as shown in this example, I don't have to have a single column, but I can actually have multiple columns combined together in some way. So here we're trying to say, well, what is the max for not just the sales amount or the tax amount, but when they're added together? So if I had an unusual large tax amount or low tax amount, it might affect the ordering of things. Typically, these are related, but it's possible they don't. So in here, by looking at the max, if I were to just put the entire table in there, we'd get the maximum value that appears in there. So let's actually try this and see in reseller sales with max X. So we're in reseller sales. We'll add a new column. And I'll call this, let's put the formula in there, that way I know what to call it. So let's call this max gross sale, and I'm going to call it max X, so that we know what it actually is. And so here we're doing reseller sales, the entire table listed, and I think my syntax is Power Pivot syntax instead of instead of Power BI syntax. So I think here this reseller sales and the quotes are the problem. Let's take those out. I'm used to just clicking into Power BI, so I forget sometimes what the syntax is, and this is seller sales, sales amount. Oh, it's all one word here. It's a problem. All right, so that should probably be okay, isn't it? Or no? Two equal signs. This is where I had a problem in pasting the formula in one of the other examples that I couldn't get this to work. So that looks correct. That looks correct. Still saying something is wrong. Sales equals max X, reseller sales. Let's say tax amount here. That's still error now. No, now it's right. So my error is not updating in real time, but 30,125 is there. And Bill proves this in Excel that this is the correct amount. So he'll create this calculated column. He actually does an insert column here, as we've seen in the previous values. And he's going to do birth date. But let me check this actually. Let's make sure this is the right sales. So sales amount plus tax amount. This data is actually in the data warehouse database. So if we said select max, let's do from factory seller sales, that's where it is. And so we want the sale amount plus the tax amount. And so that's 3125,1085, and that's what we see here. So it's always good to check your data and check that you've actually put the correct formula in here, especially when you're dealing with these different types of functions in here, because it's easy to make a mistake. So let's keep going. So he's going to actually get the latest birth date. He wants the youngest people, which is an interesting one. I've actually seen somebody mess this up before where they said, here's the thing. So let's find the youngest customers. And so people would think, oh, I want the min, but for dates, the youngest person would have the max birth date, not the min birth date. So he's going to say the youngest person. What does he call this? So latest birth date is what he's going to call this. So let's get that. And let's add that new column to customer. So I don't think I've renamed customer, have I? Dim customer here. New column. Latest birth date should equal the max birth date. And close that out. And we'll check our value against Bill's. So the value that we actually get, and the reset here is probably a WPF thing. So 6/25, 1986. And birth date. So he has different data. But I think that probably makes sense only in the fact that Bill wrote this with 2008 R2 version of AdventureWorks Data Warehouse, and I had the 2017 version. So I suspect that if I was going to get this from dim customer, we want the birth date, 86/6/25 would be the value that we should get. So if you're going through these stairways yourself and you're going to practice, keep in mind that the version you have of the sample database could potentially affect what is actually going on here. So we've done that. And now let's look at max X. So max X, again, is the iterator. So it's going to determine the largest numeric value based on an expression in each row. So Bill wants to insert a column in here, and he's going to do max X for. So he's going to filter because he doesn't want the entire table, which makes sense. In this case, working with product, I believe what he's actually going to do is get it for a specific product. So let's just see what he wants to do it for the tires and tubes. So the idea is that for whatever reason, he wants a column in here that's only got the max value of the product subcategory tires and tubes, and he's getting the max for, let's go down here and see what he's going to do. The standard cost. So he's getting the standard cost. So here is actually the formula that's going to be in there. That's going to get us the table. So this is the first parameter to max X, is that we're going to filter first, which is going to say return a table for only these things. And he's going to look at product, the product table, but he's going to filter that down. So in Power BI, when I do this, I would go to product and in my model. As before, so new column. So I think he calls this standard cost, tires and tubes, max tires and tubes. He has some sort of mnemonic in here that he uses. And so here what I want to do is the max X. Now this has two things. So the first one is a table that we're going to do. So in terms of the filter expression, what we're going to do is say, let's pick a table, and then we're going to qualify that. So we'll pick product. And then I want to qualify that with an expression. In this case, the expression that I want to use is I want to say that I have the related table name equal to tires and tubes. So I'm looking through a parent-child relationship here to find the values that match this qualification by saying this is the related area that I want to look at in a parent or child table, and then this is the value I want. So when I say, what I actually want to do is related here. So I'm trying to get a column out of this. Oops, sorry. Product, comma. Here's where I want the related expression. Is it related table? No, it's just related. I haven't worked with related table enough to quite tell what's the difference. So product subcategory, English product name is where I am. And that gets me the related part. And then I want that to be equal to, I think I need double quotes, tires and tubes, which is one of the sections in that table. All right. And so if that's the case, that I get those values, now what I want to return is the product standard cost. So standard cost. All right, let's make this a little bit bigger so I can see it. The trick I actually got from Razor Rad said I can use this this up and down to expand my DAX area. So I've got the max X here. Inside that, the table is this portion of it. So this is the table that we're looking at with the table expression. And whatever matches out of this, we'll get the max standard cost. And the max here is we're going to take product, but we're going to filter it down by the name equals tires and tubes. So if we look at that, this is more complex in SQL if I actually do this because it's a pain. $13 is what's listed there, and I believe that's the same thing that Bill will in fact find here. It's $13.09. Now in SQL, what I'd have to do, so if I look at product subcategory, what you'll see is that somewhere in here there's a tires and tubes. And so let's do where English So that says I'm product subcategory 37. If I were to look at product, or we renamed dim product to product, I have a product subcategory key equal to 37. What we'll see here then is there's a very limited number of rows that come back, probably more than 10, but I've just qualified it. And so if we look at the standard cost, it's here, and most of these are very small. And if I were to say the max of standard cost, I'd find 1309, which, is that right? Yeah, 1309. I was thinking 1307, but it is 1309. And that's what part of this this article is doing, is helping you figure that out. So now, this in a column is a weird thing to say that I'm going to take one particular set of rows from here and I'm going to get the value here. Instead, what I typically want is I want some sort of filter or some slicer that applies to this, so that based on what I'm looking at in my report or what row I'm on, I get a better, or I get the correct value. So not the max of the entire table, but the max of what I'm actually looking at. And so to do that, we need a measure. Now, I don't believe in the other articles he actually said that, but he's been calling them calculated fields in the other articles. They're actually measures in Power BI is what we'd want to use. And I think in later versions of Excel, they're called measures as well. But in any case, we want to create a measure. So this time, he's going to do another table, and let's see what he adds to the table, because we can just add those things in ourselves. Latest birth date. So his new calculated field is the max of customer latest birth date. Okay, I guess. So where's customer? New measure. So we're going to call this latest birth date calculated measure max of latest birth date. I believe that's just going to give me the same value for everything, because that's the max function, not the max x. So let's drop that in a table and see what we get. So create a table. And let's put in well, we put that in. That's just one value. What if I put in a last name, which I see he has there too. Let's make that first. So again, I'm getting the same value, and it's created a hierarchy for me. As you can see here, it's set as a hierarchy. If I just do give me the value instead of the hierarchy, I just see those values. Not terribly useful. And now it's saying add the birth date as a slicer. So to add a slicer in Power BI, oops, let's move this around. Now let's say slicer. And we'll drop the birth date in there. And dates tend to go in this range here. So notice that as I slice this, I get less values in the table, and that's because it's slicing these based on these dates, and that's what's appearing. But this measure is not helpful because it's the max of the entire table. So if I take this all the way to 81, I take it to 86. And in fact, if I go all the way to 625, there's only 2 left, which is what we see over here as well. So again, I think this is illustrative of the function working, but it's not a useful use of the function because we often wouldn't want this. Now, maybe you want to know how does everybody compare to this, and so you would have some other column that said, look at the max and subtract days, or what's the difference in age, something like that. But in any case, what might be better is to use max X, and so that's what we'll do here. What does he say? Max of birthday. He's trying to create a total there, which I'm not going to do because I think someone understand what this is doing. So now he wants to do the standard cost one. So this is one of those areas when he adds it to the table, he gets a sum. So you get a sum of the maxes there because you'll get at 1309 for every single row in the table. You get a large number, which isn't good. So we're going to do a calculated column. We did this. So in the calculated fields, we'll do this as, well, he wants to do the same thing here from down the line. Let's try a different table here and see. I think everything on here is the same though, so it may not be what I want. Did he add anything else in here, or has he just got the max? So if I go to reseller sales, let's close that. No, it was in product, wasn't it? And these are sums, I think, is where I'm getting this. Don't summarize. Yep. Don't summarize. So I just get those values. Those are the values that I actually expected in there. But he was doing it, he's doing the product one. So let's go back to product up here real quick. And so for product, did we call it? Let's make this a little bigger so we can actually see what we're doing. Selections. There, that's the one I wanted. And I didn't add the max standard cost. We are seeing that because it is in fact a sum. That's the sum of sums. So by default, when I drop a field on this report, I'm summing things up. And so if I were to sum up, is this product? That's customer product. If I were to sum up 1309 for every one of these rows, which is a lot of rows, that's where I get that $7,000 figure. So I have to be careful when I'm adding these measures and things that I'm appropriately setting this value. And so when working with lots of data, sometimes it's easy to see. If you work with only a little bit of data, you could miss this. So you got to remember, if I'm trying to display a value there that I want just a value, I have to take out the summarize piece. Okay. I'm going to stop here. We've now had 3 of these classes where we've kind of gone through the iterators and the regular aggregate function. So let's jump over to the next area. We're looking at product and product X. And I thought these are interesting. When I first read this, I didn't even know what product was. Like, it didn't occur to me that product actually means multiplication of, it's the multiplication product of various items. And actually, as we go through here, we'll talk about how it's the product of everything in a column, which I don't know where I'd use that. I struggle to really think about how product might be useful to me, but we'll see. So product and product X, we have an aggregate function that does a product of all the values in a column where they're all multiplied together. And product X, again, is the iterator that allows me to filter those down. Now we start this article slightly differently in that Bill does an introduction to Power BI and Power BI Desktop. These were new at the time this was published, 2016. And so he talks about getting Power BI Desktop, how to download it, and then DAX Studio. So he links to CodePlex. Since that time, CodePlex has actually been deprecated and it's read-only, but there is a link on there to daxstudio.org, which is where you can get DAX. So that would be one of the homework items, is to install DAX, and we'll be able to play with DAX a little bit against our tabular models in the future. So DAX Studio is something I've heard about. I've never tried it. I did download it, but I haven't installed it. So that's for next time. And then there's this Power BI desktop file. Now I did download that. Let's save this one and then close it. And I opened up this other Power BI file, which is the Contoso sales sample that Bill provided as part of the download. And so you can see there's a model with 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9 tables and no visualizations here. So that's our sample file. That closes. And he goes through some of the orientation for how Power BI works. Now he does say, let's create some additional data here. So let's actually do that. And I think he's somewhat trying to illustrate an example in there. So I've got this data in one column. So let's see if I can actually take those out of here, which is what most of you would do. You would say rate, and that's not what I want to do. Let's try this again, rate. Aha, that worked. And then he wants to set this as a table. So I think, files. I haven't set anything as a table a long time. And that matters. We'll do that. Not now. So I think I've got this as a table. It's a table, and there's no design tab. Trying to just see if how do I name this? He wants to name it as a, oh, there it is. And we are going to, there it is. Right. Aha, learned something new in Excel. 2019. I have no idea what I'm doing here. I don't know. Office 365, whatever version is current right now. Then we're going to import this into Power BI Desktop. And so we've done some imports, but this should be pretty simple. That if I said, let's import this, of course I do have to in fact save this. Let's save this as rate. I'm going to drop it in my personal OneDrive. So Excel will connect to this. So my OneDrive. Which I did, I think it went into documents in it. There it is. Can't import an open file. Interesting. Some kind of lock must occur from Power BI. So I should get this. What am I going to do? Do I want the whole worksheet or just the interest rate table, which is just that table? So let's load it, which is what we're going to do. All right, then we're going to go into the model. We're going to reformat this as a percentage to as a decimal place. So the model with interest rate, we're going to format as a percentage with 2. So this is one of those things we haven't done a lot of data manipulation, but once I've loaded this into Power BI, I can reformat a particular column by coming into the model, selecting a column, and then I can change whatever I'm trying to do there. And there's a summarization that I think that's the default summarization, which is interesting. All right, so that's set. So let's look at product. So product calculates the product of all values within a column, which is weird. We'll see. We can get a blank, but if there's a 0 in there, it's included. Of course, anything multiplied by 0 is 0, so any zeros in there will kill this. So in our sample, we've got in the channel column of the channel table, there are various values. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. So if I had to multiply those together, I get 24. So I could add a new column and say the product. So new column. Of course, you have to be sure you click the right spot in Power BI, otherwise it gets very upset with you and it just gets rid of your new column. So simple product is equal to product channel. 24. Again, the values repeated. So if I was summing this up or doing any sort of aggregation, I would get 96 because there's 4 values there rather than 24. So I have to be careful when I put that in there. So this is an unlikely scenario, which I get. It's easy to see. I also hate because I still don't know where I would use product. That doesn't quite make sense. In any case, product X is my iterator. So as with all the other iterators, we have a table or table result from a function and then an expression. So what would I do here? Product X would be channel and channel. That would give me the exact same value, I think. But let's see. Channel ID is a column. So we'll do another new column. We'll call this product X is equal to product of channel. All right, in a visualization, what is this? What is different? So he's added those. I believe one here is a table. Let's just drop channel. And can I add, somehow he got the key value in there, but I can't add the key value in there. And I don't understand quite why Bill gets different results here than I do. Don't summarize. Don't summarize. Well, let's see. So we'll take channel. Oh, that was the discussion. We'll create a simple product as the channel. That's what we did already. Now in the report view. So matrix table. Matrix. That's interesting. Let's change it. So I can change visualizations by just changing this. So in the fields list, we'll expand product category table. Let's see what he says. Click the box to select its new contents into the matrix. Okay. Now expand the sales table. I need to do this for, nope, that was the first thing. So sales, I'm going to add sales amount and total cost. And they fill out our matrix. Let's get rid of the product X thing, I think, there. And now I see what Bill sees here in Power BI. So 8 million and 3 billion, right? 8 billion, 3 billion. That's about right. So with matrix selected, format under visualization, let's make it larger, which I completely agree with because I can't see anything. General. Where is, he's got something different because Power BI is revving so rapidly that lots of things have changed since then. So the font size. Title. Where would you think the font for everything would be? Can't scroll, make that bigger. Size, there it is. So grid, in Bill, he's showing the general tab has this, but now it's in the grid tab. Much better, I can actually read that. So click on a blank area and add the slicer. We added a slicer just a minute ago in the item, the max we're doing. So a slicer is this thing here. If you hover over any of these, you'll see what they are. So for the slicer, what does he want to add? Expand interest rate in the rate column. Check it and then click format. And we're going to increase the text size. Which again is not in general. Interesting. Oh, there it is. So numeric inputs have this, whereas he has as a header has a different size. And there's one under header. Okay. That's much easier to read. Let's shrink that up a little bit. Now, this slicer is appearing this way, which I think I can change. Drill through. It's probably format. Let's take slider off. Probably a way to get the different values to appear like this, but in any case, it's kind of a range. So a different slicer here that you could do. That's one thing I think I need to look up as homework as well, is how do I change this to be a list of values and not a range. I wouldn't think any of these matter. Interesting. In any case, I just have a range here that says this to this. Oh, maybe that's it. List. That's it. Aha. There are configuration items over here. I forgot about that. So now I see a list of items. So if I were to say something, I don't think this affects there because there isn't a relationship. Okay. But we have to marry the slicer to the math. Okay, the slicer is an unrelated table. And I think that's the key, because in the model I can relate tables together. If I had related those, then this would work. So interest rate table, and let's select a new measure over here. And what we're going to do is we're going to say it's the interest rate table 1 plus the rate. So rates calc. So let's create a new measure for interest rate, new measure. Now that we're actually in Power BI and the articles, this should be valid. So don't forget I have the table or table expression and then the calculation. So if we do this, I now have a measure called rates calc. A new rate calc. So I right click the sales table in the fields list and select new measure again. So I'm going too fast. New measure. And so we're going if the sum sales total cost. Well, that's an interesting definition. Let's put that in there a second. I want to look at it. So we'll put that in here. Let's make this bigger. So I'll expand this and then I'll control right click with my wheel. Okay, so the whole thing is if this, then this. Projected cost is a measure that displays containing sales amount and total cost juxtaposed with the product. All right, so we need to format this as currency, so let's just leave this alone for now. We'll select it. And we'll format it as currency. It is. Interesting. So I don't get the option to change to a different currency where Bill has different currency conversions. I think because this is in fact changed in Power BI now. All right, so we're going to drop it to the right of total cost. We're going to bring projected cost into our matrix. So projected cost, drop it into our matrix. And it's a very big number. Okay, 66,821, which is there. So what if I said 2%? It's a different number. This is where I like working with smaller data sets because I could miss those changes, right? Because this is always 66, 104, 40. That's at 65. I would have a very high interest rate. It'd be at 70. But if I was only testing in a narrow range, I might miss the changing of the numbers there. And my total cost is the same no matter what. If I watch this number, no matter where I click, that's the same. But this changes. So that's an interesting way to give an analyst the ability to perform a what if here. And in terms of what this means, right, this projected cost, oh, I did see it there, sorry. I can see what I'm actually doing here is that I'm taking the cost times the interest rate calculation that we actually have put in here to produce this value, which is a very creative use of adding a measure that allows somebody to do a what-if scenarios. So now we want to do, let's add a slicer to do totals by year. So we're going to add another slicer to a different place. Now, I need to make sure I haven't selected anything in here because otherwise I won't get a new slicer. I'll change the existing item that I have. So we're going to expand the calendar table and pick the year. So I have this selected, and we're going to expand calendar and pick just year. And we're adding that in there. Again, I could make this a list. I could make this a drop down. Now that I learned how to do this. What does he have? He's got it as a list, so let's leave it as a list. I'm going to leave the years alone for now because I can actually read those. Bill is slightly older than me, so he probably likes these larger. Though if I wanted to, I could come in here and say, you know, the items probably need to be larger. Maybe I don't care about the header. So he's got these set up. I think if I could do a multi-select with control, okay. So changing those values. So he's got what I've got there, and then he's showing this. I don't know how he gets this value, but he must be doing something. In any case, this projected cost and this total cost, right? This is 12,397. If I take away, well, if I pick a certain year, 2011. What if I add another year? So that 12 million goes to 34. So that's what, 18 million. So if I do that, 22 million. So you can see as I pick these, I'm getting these adjusted, which is to me where this the power of Power BI, the value of Power BI comes in, because I can build these slicers and I can allow somebody to say, well, if I wanted to only look at 1 year, there's only data I think for a few years in here. And I'm going to go say, well, what's the difference between the interest rates if maybe I'm buying these items and the interest rate matters for me to place a purchase order, or maybe there's some sale interest rate that we use to charge customers. And so I might look at these and say, what would be the difference at different interest rates across these categories or across these totals, which is very, very valuable. All right. So he doesn't explain this. I have a feeling this is probably something he created in Excel somewhere, or he formatted something differently across the years to look at that we don't see. But in any case, we get our first look at how the Power BI actually fits in here as opposed to pivot tables and Power Pivot and Excel, even though I've been stumbling along with those. So how is product useful? Well, this is an interesting one with the max X and this projected amount, projected cost, by taking the cost times the interest rate calc, right? My interest rate here was the product of 1 plus the interest rate. Right? And that's a very interesting calculation, which Casper actually, I think, gave this to Bill. These financial calculations are worth hanging on to because I think sometimes it's hard to think about how to build them in Power BI, but once you've seen that example, it can become very, very valuable. So this is something I certainly want to keep in mind for in terms of estimating things out or estimating the effect of some factor on a number that I would allow somebody to perform a what if with. So that was interesting. All right. So I think we're going to call it. It's about an hour. I've gotten through now. In class 6, we went through, where are we at? Max and product. So we went through level 9 and level 10 today. Last time we did count and average. Before that, sum was the only one. I think we had these, a number of these in earlier ones. So next time we will be in class 7. So we will look at concatenate and concatenate X. I don't know if we will get through 2 levels next time or not. We'll have to see how this is. The homework will be to install DAX Studio and then to read 11 and 12. And I'll decide as I read through them how far I think we'll get. And so we'll either have 1, 2, or 3 more classes depending on how it goes. So in any case, there are other classes on the community circle at Redgate if you want to see it. They're the data platform classes. We have query tuning from Grant, which is on Tuesdays, I believe. Reporting services on Monday from Kathy, and T-SQL on Wednesdays from Kendra, and then I have Power BI and DAX. So thanks for joining in. I hope you learned something, and good luck playing with DAX and learning more about how this works.